progressivity is unjust. People have a right to what they earn, even Californians and New Yorkers. But politicians like being able to say that they are ensuring that the rich pay their share. And nothing proves their anti-rich credentials like sponsoring fresh legislation for more progressivity. So for years, president after president, Democrat and Republican, and Congress after Congress have passed law after law to make the income tax more progressive. President Richard Nixon signed a law that took 9 million taxpayers at the bottom end off the income tax staircase entirely. Other presidents like Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton took a few more million out. George W. Bush removed even more. So today, nearly half of Americans pay no income tax at all, and 10% of earners pay 70% of all income tax. Talk about disproportionate. Here we get to a genuine question of fairness. There's something wrong with our democracy when people who pay no tax can vote for tax increases on fellow citizens who already do pay tax. But reversing a century of progressivity won't be easy. For when you cut taxes for all in a progressive rate structure, the rich necessarily get a larger tax break. That is so because they pay a greater share to begin with. And advocating larger breaks for the rich is not a popular political move, to put it mildly. Many economists make the case for a true flat tax. Others tout a sales tax. Consumers would then pay taxes only on what they buy. Either way, it's time for politicians to give up their small talk about the earned income credit, the child credit, and so on, and get out their saws to dismantle the big staircase, our disproportionate progressive income tax. The country could then try a tax code that's simple and easy to navigate, like a new road that runs straight ahead into the horizon. Many of us would call that progress.
What's going on, everyone? Stocks with Kenny here today, and this is going to be the inconvenient truth about the progressive tax codes, I guess, in a way, right? And one of the reasons I'm doing this video is that for a long time I've been hearing a lot of people, especially my generation, I'm a millennial, by the way, is that socialism is just as popular as capitalism. And a lot of people don't see it's not obvious to many people about the counterintuitiveness of increasing taxes on the rich or the most productive of our society. For instance, if you do any research and you see what will consider someone the top 10% in income, it's usually around the 6-figure mark. I showed stats on this channel before where nearly 48% of people who make 6 figures are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, those are the people that pay about, as you saw from the intro, almost 70%. They're responsible for 70% of the tax revenues that the government get. But people are saying we should tax them more. Isn't that greedy? Right? I always love the fact that when these progressives or these people who are socialists or whatever persuasion they want, the left likes to identify themselves as, when they like to condemn the capitalists and the people as greedy because they want to keep more of their money or they don't want to give more of their money, end of the day, forced charity isn't charity. And that's what taxes is. You want to force the rich to give more of their money that they produce, where if they didn't exist, you wouldn't even have the opportunity to ask for the money, right? And you're demanding them to pay more while people at the bottom 50% of the tax code, most of them are paying zero in taxes. But if you look at who benefits mostly from the government entitlement programs that the rich fund 70% of, is those bottom 50 who don't pay a single cent into the tax pool. But who looks like the greedy one in this example, right? This is why I'm a big proponent of the flat tax. Everyone paid the same. Everyone contributes the same based on their income level. What you can give. If you make $30K a year, hey, your tax rate is 50%. If you make $300K a year, your tax rate is 15%. It doesn't matter because the rich will still pay more in taxes than the people on a lower economic scale because 15% is proportional. That's why it always baffles me with the progressive tax and why these progressives keep wanting to wear dresses like AOC talking about tax the rich. And I'm like, yo, that's the dumbest thing you could ever do, even if you want the government to get more taxes. Let's take a look at this clip and I'll show you why.
After President Reagan and Congress drastically reduced the tax rates on the rich, the tax revenue that came from the rich actually increased. All economists, even the most left-wing ones, agree that the true Laffer curve, the one that reflects real life, has a hump. Now, therefore, the curve has a downward sloping part, meaning at some point Tax revenues start going down when you increase rates. So where then do economists disagree? They disagree about exactly where the hump occurs. When I took my first economics class in 1984 at Stanford University, the textbook said that the hump occurs somewhere around the 70% tax rate. But apparently, I was taught something wrong. New evidence from an unexpected source suggests that the hump occurs at a much lower tax rate, something around 33%. That source is a study by Christina Romer and her husband David Romer. Both are economics professors at the University of California, Berkeley. Christina Romer was the chairman of President Barack Obama's Council of Economic Advisors. In other words, the study was written by one of the most influential liberal economists in the United States, and it was published in the American Economic Review, the most widely respected economics journal in the world. The study examined how national income responds to tax rates. But as far as what concerns us here, the key point is that if you do the math, the results imply that the hump on the Laffer curve occurs where the tax rate is around 33%, much lower than economists previously thought. Let's now put these findings into political terms. They suggest that no matter what your politics, you should not want tax rates to be above 33%. Obviously, conservatives and many moderates think rates should be lower than that. But even if you are an extreme left-winger and your only goal is to make government as big as possible, you should still oppose a tax rate higher than 33%. The reason is that, as the Romer and Romer study suggests, when tax rates go higher than that, the government actually gets less money. Everyone of every political persuasion should pay attention to the Romer and Romer study and its important implications. They suggest that if we decrease tax rates, government revenues might actually rise.
Those are the facts. This is why Republican administrations tend to have higher tax revenues than Democratic administrations, because the Democrats always threaten to increase more taxes, and the business owners are like, nah, I don't feel like working, right? This is democracy for you. How is people who contribute no taxes able to vote and decide whether someone gets to how those taxes are used? That don't make sense to me, right? When the women come out here, like the liberal women, they come out here and say, my body, my choice. Therefore, they're saying that men shouldn't have any say on how abortion is settled. But at the same breath, they'll say they'll want people who contribute nothing to the tax code, which is nearly half of America. You want them to vote and decide how the tax funds are used. Oh, we should have entitlement programs for welfare, Section 8, all these stuff. Segment of the population that tends to not pay into any taxes. Sorry, single mothers are the poorest people, or the poorest demographic in our country. I'm just speaking straight facts here, right? And this is why the progressive tax rate is not a fair system. When they say, the rich should pay their fair share, how is it that the top 20 are paying almost 80% of the taxes in this country? How much more did you have to pay? It's almost seemed like you guys want all their money. This is why I say I call progressives, socialists, they're just looters. This is why socialism never works, because it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the money comes from only 20% of the people. And then you want 80% of the people who only contribute about 20% of the remainder taxes. You want them to have more say over the taxes just because there's more of them. This is why democracy is cringe, right? In a republic system, all the top 20% of taxpayers, only they get to vote on how most of their share of the tax revenue get used in our system. Doesn't that seem more fair? But when it comes to fairness, it seems like progressives and the left has a weird, obscured view of it. And here's the inconvenient truth about the progressive tax. The progressive tax is that it's not really about solving any solutions, right? If you want more tax revenues, the argument is, hey, there's a limit to how much you can raise the taxes before it becomes diminishing returns. So yeah, I agree. 33% should be the cutoff. That should be the ceiling. But if you look at our current tax rate, we're over that. And they're wondering why they're struggling to get tax revenue. Why we can't pay anything off? Because people are not rewarded for their productivity. You show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. If you create an incentive where people will lose nearly half of their earnings if they work hard or if they produce a lot of income, Don't be surprised when you get less of those people. This is a prime argument for the flat tax, because at least in that rate, everyone can go as far as their earning potential will allow them, and you'll get a lot more tax revenue from that than to, okay, at 40, we'll tax you at nearly 40% because we think you make too much money. That's not a fair system. But hey, I digress. People. This is how politicians stay in power. They give lip service for a solution, for an approach that once you have the data, once you have the evidence in front of you, shows you the reality. The reality is this doesn't work. This is actually going to be counterintuitive. This actually hurts us as a country. But why the politicians keep advocating for it is because that's what people want to hear. They know most people don't understand these facts, these statistics, this data. So they're going to keep advocating for it because it sounds like it'll work. Oh yeah, if you just increase the tax revenue, of course the government will get more money. But they don't understand that people aren't robots. Humans are not robots. If I see, oh damn, 40% from my tax bracket, let me stop working as hard. Let me go get another job because I ain't paying that. Because at the end of the day, if you look at it from a tax perspective, if you say, hey Kenny, if you make six figures, Kenny, and you lose 50% of your income, but if you make $80,000 a year, you only get taxed 25%? Let's say 25%. I'm gonna find every way to stay at 80K because I get to keep most of the money, most of my money. But if my capacity is 100K and you want to take half of what I earn off of that 100K, it's smart for me. The math is mathing. The math says, Kenny, don't work as hard, and that's less tax revenue for you. Like they say, a stale worker causes the government more money. But I digress. Let's look at the next clip where they compare different countries and how we're actually more progressive when it comes to taxes anyway than these other models of success in other countries. Let's take a look.
The U.S. income tax system is substantially more progressive, meaning that income tax rates rise as income rises, than other advanced countries, including Germany and Sweden. So if you think that our tax system is unfair because it coddles high earners, then you must conclude that tax systems in these other countries are even more unfair. So how high are tax rates on Americans today? Well, throw in federal tax increases mandated in 2013 and state taxes, and top earners face a tax rate of more than 50% in California and New York. Other states like Maryland and Connecticut are not far behind. Do you think a tax rate of greater than 50% is fair? If so, is there any rate that wouldn't be? Nobody's calling for bake sales for anyone in the top 10% of earners, and no one wants to minimize the struggles of those at the lower income strata. But to say the rich, however you might define them, don't pay their fair share is simply wrong.
Yeah, at this point, this is merely just a narrative, right? It's a narrative that the politicians are pushing because they know that sounds good to 80% of the people, right? I already showed you. Look, if you look at the evidence, if you're just looking at the evidence, 50% of Americans don't pay any taxes into the system. Usually they make less than 45K a year, I think. They barely pay any taxes, right? We show you how the tax cuts in previous administrations, they only cut taxes for the lower 10% of the tax people. And you see it's not working. Like you see it's not working. But the minute we cut taxes off the rich, the revenue comes up because those are the people responsible for majority of your tax revenue. So wouldn't the smart thing to be is like, hey, we shouldn't punish the most productive people in our society. This is why socialism is like a snake eating its own tail, because the approach is illogical, irrational. Like you're gonna penalize the people responsible for majority of your income, and then you'd be surprised. Oh my God, we got to confiscate more. We got to tax more. This is why they say inevitably when you tax the rich, you're gonna tax the middle class and you're gonna tax the lower class, because inevitably hurting the top naturally hurts the bottom. Because end of the day, the only reason I can pay taxes is because I work for a corporation. If the corporation doesn't exist, I don't pay taxes necessarily, right? We're all interconnected here. That's what capitalism realized. Capitalism realized, hey, we're all interconnected, right? I may not be able to farm for pears, but you have oranges where you're at. Hey, we'll trade. I'll give you this money, and I get access to your labor and your services. You get something out of it, and I get something out of it. Capitalism understand that, but socialism think, oh no, you should give me that pear for free because I'm a human being just like you are, but you're the one toiling and busting your to farm your field, and I'm just sitting here laying back and benefiting off the fruit of your labor. How is that not slavery? This is why I say socialism is like slavery, and taxes is operating in a similar way to the most productive people in our society. Now, if you're a libertarian, you don't like any tax. If you're a libertarian, you think taxes should be optional. So that way, if the government do something you don't like, it allows the American people to protest the government saying, hey, we're not paying taxes this year because you guys are wrecking our spending. I can agree to that, actually. Some type of charitable, make taxes merely charitable, but people are going to say, hey, then the government can't really run, and do we really have a government, But that's a lot of questions that you guys can debate that out in the comment section. But that's the inconvenient truth about progressive taxes, is that it's not actually a very smart policy, especially if you want bigger government, if you want more social entitlements, more welfare programs for people. That's not the optimal solution. And I think if politics can focus more on optimal solutions, like we have the data, we have all this information, we have test studies, we have historical evidence. Every time we see the Republican administration, they get more tax revenue than the Democratic administration. But do you think they care? No, because the Democrats say, hey, we got to say these 3 magic words, tax the rich, and we get all the young people, all the people who love socialism. Hey, I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I would really like to hear what you guys are thinking about progressive tax. You're in favor of flat tax, or you're more in the libertarian camp that the taxes should be purely optional. Taxation is death. Right? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I really like to hear them. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I really appreciate you guys watching this episode of Inconvenient Truths. Peace.